There's Charlie. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Greg. Hi, Sharon.
How are you? It's always good to see my biggest fan. Thank you.
Doing what I can. I'm looking forward to getting the recording of the climate change.
Right. Yeah, we'll have that go out early next week.
Of course.
And I'll make some more noise about it in the coming weeks. A little bit more noise. I mean, it's just getting worse.
Yeah, no, I think it would be good to share with our president.
Yeah, I mean,
University president.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, people write me, they're like, yeah, I never thought about it this way. And I'm like, yeah.
It's a nice dashboard.
Yeah. So let's see. Thank you. Other folks are starting to roll in. I never know which topics are going to draw the biggest crowds. Hi, Chad. Nice to meet you. Courtney, can't see you yet, but looking forward to engaging. Let's see. Hey, Jeff. And then maybe this will be a small one. I don't know. Let's see here. Last one was like 40 people. So I'll give it another like 30 seconds. Hopefully Chad and Courtney don't jump away because there's so few, but there's other people coming, I see. And I'll give them another minute because I don't know why, actually. It would be the right thing to do. There's Kareen. All right. And we don't have any customer success people here today, looks like. Okay. All right. Yeah, people are rolling in a little bit now. A lot of new people here today. Thank you for joining us. Hi, everybody. I'm Greg Warner. I guess I will get started because we're two minutes over. I don't want to delay too much longer. We'll just go through like the housekeeping stuff for now. So hi, everybody. For those, I see a lot of new names today. So for those who don't know me, I'm Greg Warner. I'm the CEO and founder of MarketSmart. And I'm the guy who worked with Dr. Russell James to create the training course. So if you're in the training course, there's, I distilled it to help people get through the course. So let's see. Today, we're going to talk about pausing and patience. And here's the little agenda for the day. I'll give you quick housekeeping items. Then I'll give you my spiel on pausing and patience. And we'll break into groups, have about 15 minutes to tell some stories and see what resonates, if what I talk about with regard to pausing and patience actually has happened to you or you've done it and had success. Then we'll come back together as a group and share some of those stories that we heard in the breakups, and we'll wrap up. And then you'll get a survey at the very end inviting you to give us feedback so we can make this better. So this is interesting. It is one of the lesser attended, at least at this stage, events. Not sure why that is, but maybe in the feedback form, people will tell me. Maybe the topic wasn't as inviting. All right, so the quick housekeeping is that keep in mind that anybody who's involved in your organization can attend these events. They're free. And you'll notice that if you're a MarketSmart customer, there may be e-course students, if you will, here. And if you're an e-course student, you'll notice you might engage with a MarketSmart customer in your breakout. You can always feel free to share the meeting link if you get value out of this with other staff and leadership, volunteers, even board members, if you'd like. And one reminder is that if you're taking the e-course, remember it is an annual subscription and you can give that course to everybody. So the more people that get the benefit from it, the less, I guess, it costs per person. And you get access to these Mastermind mixers too. If you feel that you would like a demo to learn what MarketSmart does, or you want someone in your organization or even a friend at another organization to learn what we do, we are down with that. Please invite them, just send them to our website, imarketsmart.com, and we would be very happy to help them understand what we do and how we can help them. All right, so let's get into pausing and patience. If you're in the e-course, this is essentially lesson 17 in the fast track, is what I'm going to be talking about. I forget where it is in Dr. James's books. I'm more intimately aware of the fast track. So one of the research points that Dr. James brought forth in his books is that the top best performing 20% of fundraisers generate 75% of the donations on average, the donation dollars on average for their organizations. It's an interesting number. I'm not surprised. It's kind of the way it works in sales for private sector revenue generating teams. So what is the reason why they outperform? At first I thought, well, maybe it's they're more experienced, maybe they have more longevity, they have better donors, so to speak. But what Dr. James found was that they make substantial and serious solicitations. So the people they work with, when they work with them, the proposals they put forward are just more, they're bigger and more consequential. So, okay, that's a grandiose statement. What else do they do, or how do you make more substantial and more serious solicitations? Well, the secret to that, according to Dr. James, and we've found this too at MarketSmart, is pausing and patience. And I'm going to explain what that means and give you a couple of examples. But in the course, he says, and I'll just read it if that's okay, high performers ask confidently because they understand the donor's connections and motivations, right? So this isn't drive-by soliciting. This isn't ambush asking, two of my favorite phrases. Instead, this is more relational, intentional, collaborative. So they engage with the donor properly over time, acting as their guide, providing real value and a VIP donor experience. Remember, Dr. James says you can't expect to get $1 million gift without providing the donor with $1 million experience. So he continues, in that way, the top 20% play the role properly as the sage. We've talked a lot about Dr. James and the characters in the hero story. There needs to be a sage, kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi for Luke Skywalker, right? A guide, someone who helps them complete their philanthropic story. And as a result, they make asks that are essentially foolproof, is what Dr. James says. Now, this is going to be unbelievably ostentatious and braggadocious. So I'll move on from this really quickly, but that's my house. I just took the picture right before I was coming in here. And like, for some reason, some of the trees are already blooming already. Others aren't. Anyway, and that's my little Porsche, 1956 Porsche, right? So it sounds like I'm really bragging. That's not why I'm showing you a picture of my house. The reason why is because we built that house. Well, first of all, if you don't know me, I like to tell people I'm a ticked off major donor, and that's why I built this software and system, is because I really knew how it felt to be over solicited and sort of to have people want to extract wealth from me instead of helping me gain value. But the real reason for me showing this is because when we built this house, well, first of all, I mean, I should go back and say that I bought the property. It had a little house on it. I knew I wanted to build a custom house. We're right outside of DC, so the lots are really tiny. but I knew I wanted to do that. And we met with 3 different architects. I mean, the plot cost me almost $1 million just for a 1/4 acre. But I wanted to meet with 3 different, and trust me, this will come back to fundraising and how this helps you. But we met with 3 different architects because we were going to be spending about $1 million on top of the land, $1 million to build the house. I think it came to 1.1 million. So it was a big deal to hire an architect, and they weren't cheap. The first one arrived like 10 minutes late and just was rude. Like I was done with them before the meeting even started. The second one, she put us in a room in her office, which was a big room, and it was empty, but it was so cool, like architectural and everything. And then she told us how great she was for like an hour. And then she put forward a contract. Like she tried to sign us on the spot. High pressure, very uncomfortable. So we left there. We told her, no, we'll think about it, but we knew we weren't going to go with her. Now, the third one was so kind and so accommodating, and started off, all he did was ask us questions about us and what we wanted and what our dreams were for this home and for our children. And our kids were young at the time. So like, where do you want the homework area and this? And he started sketching out things and showing us pictures. And then this is where we get to what's the similar with this fundraising is that towards the end of the hour, a lot of questions about us, barely anything about him and his experience and all that. But he said, usually the next step is I like to drive around with people around the neighborhood and look at other houses and show you some of the houses that I helped build and even introduce you to those people. And you can ask them anything you want, and maybe they'll let you walk through their home and we could talk about the details and all that. So he paused. He did not try to sell us. He just invited us to engage in a much deeper way with him, and what the value he delivered. We found this process was awesome. We drove around, my wife in the front, I was in the back. I'm like a little kid in the middle of and it was a great experience all the way through. And he ended up being really great. I mean, we were happy with the sales experience. And that pause and being able to meet these people and really take our time. So his patience helped close the deal, really. One thing that he did was he asked for permission, to do that with us. I mean, he didn't say this is what you have to do. He said, he invited us to do that, which was very helpful. Now, if you were in some of the other, I think it was 2 Mastermind mixers ago, I talked about the invitation step. I won't go through that whole thing here, but I want to remind people that there are multiple steps of asking for permission and taking a donor's pulse that are very important along the way. The most pivotal is the one that I don't think too many fundraisers do. And Dr. James alludes to it in his research and in his course, but he doesn't actually explain how to do it, which I've talked to him about, and he's not gonna, because actually then I built it out. But basically that's the invitation step. I won't go too deep into it right now, but it's really where you invite the donor not to give, but to explore further, right? To get more involved, to meet program staff, to take a tour, things like that. There are 10 components to a perfect invitation that I've devised, and they're here, and you'll get them in the recording and the slides later. So I won't go too deep into that. But asking for permission along the way, and then finally asking for permission to ask about giving is very important. And it makes it so that you in many cases, you don't even have to actually do a traditional ask, a solicitation, a high wire act, a high pressure presentation, right? In other words, with the pause and patience, you're asking permission to slow things down and help the donor gain a tool, like, as Dr. James uses, Thor's hammer. They need tools to wield so they can gain a victory in their donor hero story, right? So some of those tools are experiences. Some of them are meeting with the people, the program staff, because they're giving through the organization to help them achieve things. So let's keep it rolling. And what's great about Dr. James' content is he'll put the actual words he recommends you say. For instance, my job is to put together personalized options for you to consider. Would you mind if we set time to look over some of these ideas? Or would you be willing to explore ideas with me? Would you be interested in hearing more about how you could this, that, the other thing, or here's some possible ways to achieve X, Y, and Z, right? So it's a permission or an opt-in kind of process where you keep taking the temperature and inviting people to lean in further, to give you permission to engage with them further, right? So now this pause is essential for highly considered financial decisions. So this is in fundraising, it's true, and in private sector sales, it's always it's been proven effective. In fact, maybe he got this in part from the private sector sales relationship selling kind of content. But pausing is a opportunity to provide more value to the donor to help them get through the decision-making process. Okay, so now this is a very complicated graphic that if you're in the course, you've probably seen this before, or at least the first outer circle he talks about a lot, which is that each donor has an original identity. It's their life story and their beliefs, their values, their family, their people, their tribe, if you will. And when the first challenge is really, in some cases, to just challenge them to meet with you, where they have to decide, am I going to meet with the fundraiser or not? Am I going to accept their call or not? Right? And then they'll gain a victory. They'll realize, oh, that was beneficial. And that makes them feel better about who they are. And this is there. It's more like a, what would you call this? Not a whirlwind, but sort of a vortex, where you keep getting smaller and smaller. And the smallest circles mean you're closer to the ask. So you would, and administrators, if there are any on here, sorry, but there are many organizations that sort of drive the solicitation. They're like, okay, you got the meeting, don't leave there without asking them for money, But what Dr. James found, the most successful fundraisers, they don't do that. They insert a pause. This line is supposed to represent the pause in the process, in the smallest circle, which is closest to the decision time for a donor to make a substantial gift, a major gift. The pause increases value, and increased value increases trust. But all of this requires massive amounts of patience, which often administrators or leaders, board members don't have, for sometimes good reason, because the institution or organization needs money. I get it. But you get more with pausing, is the truth. So, okay, remember that you are the guide and sage, much like our little friend Yoda. Your role is to help donors advance their hero story and find meaning in their life and gain value through exchanging their money for good, right? But we certainly want to focus on assets and relationships, not which are getting involve this type of scenario, which again, Dr. James proved that putting a pause in the process allows for time to increase value and trust. What he found was that the people who add a pause end up with donations, gifts, major gifts that are twice as large as the others who don't. Okay, so what's a pause? So a pause, it sort of forces you, like I was describing that architect, to make the meetings very inquisitive and be super hyper curious, because you know that you're not asking for money in that meeting. You're looking to see how you can provide value and be collaborative, so you can customize a proposal that fits, right? And especially if you do the invitation the way I explained it a couple of weeks ago, it's very transparent. Like, you got to let the donor know this is who you are, this is what you do. You're not going to put pressure on them. You're going to take it slow and make sure the fit is right for them. So doing that kind of transparency and just being really straight with people makes them feel safe, especially since they probably had meetings with other fundraisers where they've been solicited on the spot, they felt pressure and all this. So they want to feel safe. They want to trust you. Doing it this way increases their trust. It also is magical in that in the time between your first meeting and the next one, it gives the donor time to reflect, and it sort of lets their subconscious mind think about how they can be the hero in their own life story if they were to work with you and go forward. So that's a good thing. We want that. You know, it's funny, we talk about cultivation all the time. And this is what we're talking about with cultivation. Like, when you think of in a farm, you plant the seed and then you let it cultivate, right? And then it grows over time. It doesn't happen instantly. So this helps. It gives breathing room for the donor to move themselves from what they're normally involved in as a transaction. Or if they're getting direct response mail or invited to events, that's all transaction world, if you will. And we want to move them into wealth world and relational asset giving world. Okay. The last, let me see. Whoops. The last one that he mentions here. Sorry, something's blocking this. Oh, yeah. It just makes everything that you're doing feel more valuable when you provide a pause. So in the course, he gives us a few examples of how he recommends, and I broke these out so you understand like what he's doing here. So he says, you remind me of another donor. That means like it shows them that others like them have been in the same situation. So they were in a fairly similar situation. And I remember they used some very creative planning to avoid taxes so they could make a bigger impact. Would you mind if I put together some ideas for you? And this is where we get into that. There's him asking for permission. It's a valuable offer. And what you want to come back with is a menu. And if you've been through the course, you know I talk about menus all the time, and I'll bring that up almost weekly. Menus are very powerful, even if they're just hand scribbled and you just say, pick one. What are you interested in most? It really, people like menus. They just help them distill their thinking. So here's another one, which involves introducing an ally to help work on this project and collaborate with the donor, where he says, I'd like to work with a few others at my organization to put together some options that match what we've been discussing. I think you'll be interested, and I'd love to get your thoughts on what we come up with. Would you be open to that? So bringing in allies, it could be a board member who has a specialty, for instance, in real estate. And maybe this particular donor has real estate or business interests that they're thinking of donating, right? So allies are powerful. Here's another one with an ally. You mentioned that you're going to pass the business to your kids. Do you know that there's ways you can do that can save you money on the transaction? Now, these things are kind of on my next visit, I'll bring specialists in to help you, right? So this begs the question of like, well, what if you don't have a specialist to help you? And these are kind of getting into nitty gritty details that may be a major gift, with regard to taxes and financial aspects. But it may be bringing in a program person or giving them an opportunity to meet the musicians at the symphony, something like that. So here's another one where it creates a task, putting ideas together for them to look at. So the idea behind this is to ask for a pause, like your first ask. You might want to consider asking for a pause instead of asking for a gift. When you do, it's important to try to schedule that meeting right then and there. Don't say, I'll reach out to you in a few days and then we'll schedule it. That always kind of creates extra friction in the process. So when you ask, this is me telling you this, by the way, I don't think Dr. James got into this, but we found at MarketSmart that it's best to try to schedule the next meeting when you get agreement that they're okay with taking a pause. Now, if you've ever been through MarketSmart's sales process, where we're of course trying to sell you our system if there's a good fit, but if and maybe give a thumbs up if you're a customer and you're here and you've been through this, you will have our salespeople know to never ask somebody to buy our software, especially not in the first meeting. What we do, though, instead, is we always ask people if they would like us to conduct an opportunity analysis, because we guarantee 10-to-1 ROI on the value of our system. They're going to get 10 times more. A lot of them get 50 or 100 times the value of our system in return. But what we like to do is see, like, can we really promise this? Can we really achieve it? We need to look at some of your data and provide you with an opportunity analysis. And I'd say like 98% of the time, we can make good on our promise. And if the opportunity analysis shows that we can't, then we politely let them know that we really can't help them. I mean, in fact, we had one last year that bought anyway, and they're doing quite well because to them, 8-to-1 ROI is still better than anything else they're doing. But the point of all this is to give you the example of my experience with the architects. God, I hope that didn't seem too braggadocious, please. I'm just trying to be real. But also to show you that MarketSmart does this, even though both of those are private sector examples. Dr. James proved through the data that it does work. Patience is powerful. And this, by the way, comes from our major gift benchmark study that we did a couple of years ago, is that 81% of the respondents said that it takes between 6 months and 2 years to close a major gift. I've read in some books the average is really about 14 to 16 months. So then here's just some quotes sort of supporting Dr. James. Jerry Panis is one of the old-time, well, he's gone now, sadly, but experts in the field, saying that the chances are almost certain you won't receive a meaningful answer or a consequential gift on the first visit. If you do, the odds are that you could have gotten more. And if the quote was longer, I bet he could have said, if you were patient and you offered a pause. Now, Naomi Levine, she wrote this, she was a billionaire, I think, but a donor. She's a donor. And she said, was quoted in Dr. James' book, the quicker you ask, the less money you will receive. And then there's Jim Stovall. I don't know if anyone of you have read his books. He was a motivational speaker, the first blind Olympic weightlifting champion, and wrote just a whole bunch of books. He wrote, "It's a rare individual indeed who wants to listen enough to understand our philanthropic goals and help us make those goals a reality." So he's talking about listening, but I think he's also kind of talking about pausing. So, all right. So with that, I hope I'm not talking too much. Yeah, we got it. So we're going to do about 15 minutes in groups, where I hope you'll open up a bit and tell a story about when you or someone in your organization paused the process to bring in others or to provide value in some way to the donor. And what happened? Like, do you feel you got a bigger gift because of that? A deeper relationship, a more lengthy relationship? Did they give again because they like that approach, or was it a bomb? I mean, maybe Dr. James is wrong and you had a nightmare episode out of this. So yeah, we're going to break into groups, 15 minutes, and then we're going to come back and share those stories with everybody. So take us away. We might only want 2 or 3 groups, I guess. We'll see. As always, these breakouts are amazing. I think we lost a couple people on the way. Let's see if they end up. Kareen is not back yet, but yeah. So and interesting. And so my whole breakout room, I don't know where they are. They disappeared. Maybe Trisha's working on getting them back in here. So it was interesting. There was that quote from that lady, Miss Levine, the billionaire lady, and Shalita told us that she actually knew her. Yeah, which was kind of cool. Like, you put up these random quotes, and who would have known that that would be a benefactor to their cause? So, Shalita, do you mind sharing that story again?
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Naomi Levine was a lawyer in New York, and she wanted to be a fundraiser. And her mother made her promise to never tell her friends that she was a fundraiser, because she wanted her daughter known as a lawyer. But she started the Hyman School of Fundraising at NYU after years of raising billions of dollars for New York University and saving them at one of their crisis points in the history of that university. So we had great conversations, and I just revel in all that she taught me, and now I'm getting to use it. Thank you so much.
It's not often that I put up a quote from somebody semi-famous and then someone's like, yeah, I knew them. So that was kind of cool. So what did we learn? Did anybody have any good stories of pausing? I heard a couple in my group. Anyone care to share? Like, what was the best one? I feel like I could pick on my buddy Chris, because I know he's got a million stories. That's all we ever talk about is stories when we're together.
Yeah, you put me on the spot, Greg. But yeah,
sorry, man.
No, it's all good. No, hello, everybody. I was sharing with the group that, I had to make a solicitation during COVID. Wasn't a huge fan of doing it over Zoom, over the phone, but it needed to be done. So ended up talking to a family, and they didn't have any kids or anything. I knew the wealth was there. They was a major gift donor to us. And so I did your thing first, Greg, the whole permission to ask conversation. That was first. And they granted me permission to have the conversation about a month later. And then just went in and we talked legacy. They didn't have any kids. They had a huge estate. And long story short, asking for about 1.5 million, and they gave it via their estate plans. And so it was cool, and we just talked about them, getting a chance to see their legacy gift while they're, living versus, later on. And it really meant a lot to them, because they gave to 3 other charities as well. And so it was real cool. But during the ask, I asked him for a certain amount, and then he was like, well, how am I supposed to do that? You know what I mean? So I had to kind of explain it to him, and definitely, the pause thing definitely worked, because he was like, he took a deep sigh, like, how am I supposed, and so we just talked through it. And again, no pressure by any means, just letting them know that it was about them, and that I wanted to make sure that they could really see their gift while they were living. So it's cool.
So Chris is at St. Jude's, by the way, just in case y'all were wondering which institution. So that's an interesting one. I mean, in that way, the pause was really to let them think it through. It's a big decision. So sometimes pauses, in fact, I got sort of scolded for this because someone didn't like the way I said it, but that happens a lot, is we talk about just plain setting up an appointment with someone. Like when you ask for permission to meet with them, when you get that question out, sometimes people are thinking or they're scrolling through their calendar. And so you got to pause and wait for them to respond, right? But a lot of times if people get sort of antsy, it's like, I just asked if they'll meet with me, and there's dead silence. Like, are they there? What happened? You get nervous, you start talking. Maybe even sometimes you'd say, well, we don't have to meet. It's like, hold on, they're looking through their calendar. Don't spill your coffee, So, and the reason why someone got mad at me for talking about, because the way I said it was typical Greg Warner, New Jersey style, was I was like, look, when you ask a question, you have to pause and shut up. Let people think. And Devin, I'm really, thank you for the nods. You're making me feel better about it. But you got to let people think. It's just a kind thing to do. It's hard though when you're on the phone or you can't see them. Sherry's the best at this, by the way, when she calls prospective customers to invite them onto a call with Jeff as a salesperson here. We don't call him a salesperson, by the way. We call him a solutionist. Same with Sherry. Because we're really not into selling. We're into solving problems. So anyway, I'm just trying to add some color commentary there. Does anybody have one of these kind of pauses where you brought people in? I know, Charlie, you were talking about sometimes you bring in the president of the university. Are there ever like board members or financial people, maybe experts? Do you mind if I pick on you, Devin, since you're shaking your head?
Well, the one I just simply shared was, and the way you set this up earlier on, is we're asking for permission to be the guide to help to bring proposals together. And in a college setting, I'm part of a liberal arts college out here in California. It's in this case is meeting with professors to provide information about a fellowship program. So I'm keeping and they don't want to give to me. They want to give to the college. They want to give to help students. They get excited working with professors. And so it was a matter of having a professor provide information to the prospective donor about our fellowship program. And each step of the way allowed us to pursue a little bit more, get a little bit more information, find out if this is the right pathway we're on for what the donor was thinking he wanted to do. And we had to, stop and verify and get information. But along this way, it was engaging our fellowship director, who is in our science department. And it was a direct connection and provided a great opportunity for him to find out that this was the pathway that he wanted to be on. And as I told the group I was in, it allowed him to make a gift to provide a fellowship experience that we would have otherwise not pursued.
I have to tell you, recently I was on a call with someone who told me that their university frowns upon introducing donors to professors because the professors at that particular institution just don't like it and don't want to do it.
I was actually, Greg, telling a story. It's interesting. A guy I live in Philly, and a guy I played basketball with is history professor at UPenn. I was telling him what I do, and he was like, yeah, I think I was telling the group, he was like, I think there's some wacky department called development or something that does like what you're saying and he was like, and they're always having me go to these like lunches and stuff. But he actually framed it. I mean, I wasn't getting it out of him. He was like, but at the end of the day, like we have some pretty big goals in the history department. We're trying to hire more people. We have some pretty specific research areas we're looking into, and we need the money. And so I'm happy to go on those visits. He's like, most of the time, they just want to hear about how me and the other professors are experts in the field and how much experience we have and what we're working on. And they just want to know that they're investing in something, that's serious, that's really not just, just general fund, type of stuff. And so it's interesting to hear it from the other end, of the professor themselves. And I don't know if they all fall, it sounds like they don't all fall in that category of being excited for it. I was also going to say that Kendra had a really interesting story of not actually bringing in someone from her own organization, but actually bringing in another nonprofit. And I see also Shalita, you have your hand.
Yeah. Okay. Shalita, do you mind if we listen to that from Kendra real quick? And then, okay, we'll come right back to you. I see you've got your hand.
I'll make it quick, Shalita. Don't worry. Well, I had a person reach out to me this past week to share that they wanted to leave us as a beneficiary of their life insurance policy. And just in the conversation, they mentioned, I wanted to give the gift. I'm at San Jose State University. And they said, I wanted to give half of this to my fraternity, but I haven't been able to reach them. And I said, well, can I try? And I was able to connect them with their fraternity. And so even though it means that San Jose State's going to get a little bit less money, I think it's more important that the donor gets, what they want. So.
You're a beautiful person.
Oh, thank you. I honestly, I think if the metrics mattered more, I would probably have just kicked that one under the carpet, but I'm in planned giving. And so the numbers happen,
Shalita? Oh, you're on mute. Yeah.
Thank you. I was just going to say that it's not easy to pause, and that I find that I've had to practice pausing, that by drinking water or tea or just waiting. But that's one of the things Dr. Levine always said is make the ask, or Mrs. Levine, make the ask and shut up when you're at that point, or whenever you're asking for something. She just said, shut up and be quiet. And you have to practice that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just going to add, in sales, this is just kind of silly, but you asked the question, will you consider having a meeting with me? And then set your chin right on your fist and just zip it. So when I was training folks, that was you can't talk that way.
You can't talk when you do that. That's a good way that's new. I've learned something from Karine. Thank you. Chad, it looked like I don't want to put you on the spot. It looked like you were starting to say something, but no? Okay. So any other stories? Because we got 2 more minutes or we can wrap it up. Smaller little club today. You're going to get in a survey after this. We're starting to do that now that we think we've got the Mastermind mixers set. Like the beta's done. Like here we are. You just did it. Like I said, some weeks there's like 40 people. Some weeks there's 10, 5, 8. But I want to make these really great. So if you don't mind, if you have a minute to take the survey, please do. And if you don't want to, don't feel bad. But yeah, and Karina, I don't know if we know you. I haven't met you, but thank you for joining us.
Hi, yes, I'm with the Catholic Foundation for Diocese of Salina in Kansas.
Oh, yay, okay. Yeah, a lot of customers here today, so thank you for joining us. Some superstar players. If anyone else has anything else? Anyone? No? 3, 2, 1. All right, well, thank you very much for joining us. We'll do this again next month. Please invite friends. The more the merrier, I think. You people are the best. Thank you.
Thanks.